This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. The Browns are changing. Not only on the field, but also off the field. So that's what I want to talk about is the future of the Cleveland Browns and how that can look different and how different the future is going to be for both of those realities. And the first thing I'm going to start with is on the field, right? And a lot of people want to know what's the plan with Deshaun Watson. A lot of people want to know what the contract is going to do to the future with Deshaun Watson. And I think that's where most of the anxiety about the contract comes from when you hear fans freaking out about how much money he's paid, despite the fact that over the last 2 years, he hasn't even been in the top 10 in cap hits in the NFL and won't be until next season, not even this upcoming season. So why the hand wringing? Well, because there will be a price to pay on Deshaun Watson's contract. That is true. The question is, when will that price be paid, right? This is a question that the Steelers have had to answer with Ben Roethlisberger. Any team that's had a quarterback for a long period of time that has gotten paid has had to answer this question of, hey, when are we finally going to pay? Like, when are we going to take the hit that we've been avoiding in order to compete to have this guy? Now, as we know, the myth that you can't have one of the highest paid quarterbacks and win the Super Bowl, that died when Patrick Mahomes won the Super Bowl this year at the second highest cap hit in the NFL. So the idea that you can't win the Super Bowl because your quarterback's getting paid, that's a old school kind of outdated ideal, especially in a pass heavy league. But what are these next few years going to look like strategy-wise for the Cleveland Browns? That's an interesting one, right? The Browns, I think, will go all in on this year, 2023, all in on next year, 2024. After that, they're going to have to reevaluate because right now, they really have no choice but to go all in. They don't have any first-round picks. They will have limited cap flexibility, not just because of Deshaun Watson, but also because they have Myles Garrett under contract. They have David Njoku under contract. They have Wyatt Teller under contract. They have Joe Bitonio under contract. They have Nick Chubb under contract. They have, well, who else is under contract? Dalvin Tomlinson is going to be under contract for that period of time. Juan Thornhill is going to be under contract for that period of time. If you are hearing the word under contract a lot, it's by on purpose, and that's because I want you to understand that the Browns have accumulated a lot of talent over the years, and they have signed that talent through the years, which means that their deck is mainly full. There isn't much of reshuffling the cards that they can do. They have bought all their major pieces. They have set themselves up to play right now. Right? Amari Cooper, I mean, he's under contract, but he can be moved off of after this year. But, you know, Deshaun Watson, obviously under contract for a very, very long time. So the Browns are pretty much set with most of their major pieces. Will they add one here or there? Will they trade one for another? Maybe, but they are pretty much set. They're limited in their way of accumulating pieces, and they're pretty much set to win right now. Right? They should win right now. They have maxed out years of losing, years of resource gathering, all of that in order to get to this point right now. And now they got to play ball. So for the next 2 years, they will do everything they can to win. I wouldn't be surprised that even if, and I think otherwise, but there is a growing theory that Kevin Stefanski is going to be safe no matter what for the next 2 years because of this. I don't think Jimmy Haslam's patient enough for that, but I do believe that that is the working plan. Whether that's going to be followed up on is another question, but I do believe that that's the plan, right? Is that everybody is safe for the next 2 years because we need all hands on deck and we can't be affording to look around, to be looking around and to be running around during this period trying to hire new coaches and stuff. So these next 2 years are very important for the Cleveland Browns. They will see how far they can go in the next 2 years. If they've won a championship within these next 2 years, obviously nobody's upset. If they've gotten really close in these next 2 years, let's say they make 2 AFC conference championships in a row these next 2 seasons. Don't quite get to the Super Bowl, but boy, they get this close. Or maybe they get to the Super Bowl, lose, they get real close. Like they're on the cusp. Now the Browns have to make a decision. You get your first round picks back from the Deshaun Watson trade in 2025. That first round pick could obviously be used to put you over the top with the player, right? You can go all in and get one last move for one last run at it to get over the top and win a Super Bowl. Or you can say, hey, we had a great run, shut it down, reconstruct for the next couple of years. Now, the reason you want to do this will become more obvious once I explain more things, but that would be the situation they would be in. They will be in a situation where no matter what, after 2024, going into 2025, they're going to have to reassess how close are they. Are they one player away? Are they just a couple bounces of the football away? Or are they a couple of things away? I'm going to be honest with you. If it's anything other than luck, they probably rebuild this thing. Even if they just feel like they're one player away, that's too much to gamble on. So they'll probably just start to rebuild after that. So again, these next 2 years, they're trying to win the Super Bowl. If they win the Super Bowl, obviously, that's great. We'll be happy. But I think no matter what, unless we do 2 conference championships or 2 Super Bowls in a row, don't win, and we're on the cusp and we're this close, after 2024, this team is going to go through a soft rebuild. Now, why do I think that's the case? Well, Deshaun Watson's contract does have a lot to do with that. The Browns can kick this can down the road for a couple of years, but they can't kick the can down the road for the entire length of the contract. So at some point during Deshaun Watson's current contract, they have to pay out what they have pushed back in this contract in a cap hit. A cap hit is the number of money, the amount of money that goes against you that you can't use for any other player. So right now, Deshaun Watson's cap hit is like at like $10 million because they moved a lot of it to next year. But next year, it's scheduled to be 65 or $69 million or something like that. Now, it's not going to be that next year. What they're going to do is probably move $30 or $40 million of that to the next year, and then it's going to be at like 70 the year after that, and then it'll be at 40 for 2024. I think that after 2024, if they're not like on the cusp of a championship, they're probably going to start to rebuild. Now, what's a rebuild going to look like? Because we're used to old school Cleveland Browns rebuilds, which are very ugly. Everybody gets fired. Everybody loses their job. We start over. We're looking for a quarterback. That's not necessarily the case. A rebuild in this sense would be you keep Deshaun Watson, but you pay out some of the higher cap penalties in these couple of years where you're focusing on new talent. The people you will have to make a decision on after 2024 would be Myles Garrett, would be Denzel Ward. Nick Chubb might come up before that. But you see what I mean? Joe Bitonio, Wyatt Teller, Jack Conklin, all of these guys who have been signed to deals. After 2024, we're going to have to evaluate, do we just need one more push with this crew, or do we need to just start over, build something new? If you decide to start over and build something new, yes, you're going to have Deshaun Watson. You'll probably have some of the young talent on the team. Let's say Greg Newsome develops into a Pro Bowler. He will stay on the team. Let's say JOK develops into a Pro Bowler. He will obviously be on the team, or Grant Delpit or something like that. He will be on the team. But guys like David Njoku, guys like Denzel Ward, obviously I think Myles Garrett's going to be here for a very long time. But Nick Chubb, he might be gone after that period of time and be replaced by a new crop of players. And if this sounds foreign to you, think about what teams like the Packers have done around Aaron Rodgers. teams like what Pittsburgh has done, where Pittsburgh, if you think of Ben Roethlisberger's career, there's the early run in his career where you're thinking about Hines Ward and Jerome Bettis and the Bill Cowher crew that he played around. And then there are a couple years. And then there's the core of the Mike Tomlin, well, the first run of the Mike Tomlin, the Santonio Holmes team, the James Harrison team, like that core of players. And then there's a couple of years where you just kind of they were pretty good, but not super great. And then there's that other core where it's Le'Veon Bell, it's Antonio Brown, and there's multiple windows within Ben Roethlisberger's career. The Browns are going to try to replicate something similar with Deshaun Watson. They're going to try to get this window now, which probably timing-wise will be Deshaun's second window at this because he's been in the league before. And then they're probably going to capitalize on what would be a third window for Deshaun Watson in a couple of years. So they would spend 25 and 26 rebuilding, drafting talent in the first round, maybe getting a top 15 pick, really focusing on young players while still trying to compete and being a good organization that's going to be able to allow players to develop, because hopefully at that point there's been years of stability at both GM and head coach. And then 2027, you try it again. You know what I mean? You go all in again and you try to win it all. That's pretty much the strategy, right? They can't, it's not sustainable for them to go all in from here to the end of Deshaun Watson's career. They're going to have peaks and valleys in order to make this thing work. That's what I think the peak and valley would look like for this team. Now, I mentioned some stuff off the field, because I also think what's going to be likely within the next 5 years is that the Cleveland Browns will not be playing in the same stadium that they play in now. There is too much smoke for there not to be fire when it comes to the Cleveland Browns getting a new stadium or getting a heavily renovated version of what Cleveland Browns Stadium is. That is the current rumor, that the Browns are building a new stadium on the grounds where the old stadium sat, which is interesting. That would require the Browns to play somewhere else. Now, the natural thought for me and a lot of other people when you think of the Browns playing somewhere else is Columbus. They'll just play in Columbus. And then I think about that, and I think about a bunch of reasons why I don't think the NFL or the Cleveland Browns will want to do that. So if they build a new stadium where they're building the new stadium, well, where they have the old stadium at, like they did with Municipal, they would have to play somewhere else for about 3-4 years. It probably won't be in Ohio Stadium for a couple of reasons. One, Ohio Stadium is still an AstroTurf field. Well, a field turf field, not AstroTurf, but a field turf field. The league's trying to phase that out. I would find it unlikely that they would introduce another field turf field to the league. Now, it's one thing if the Browns play at like Ford Field that already has turf. It's another thing to add another venue. So the field turf reason is one. The other reason is it would be like, 2 hours from Berea. I don't think that's something that the team necessarily would be excited in doing. And also the capacity of Ohio Stadium and the layout of that building. One, it's a lot of bleacher seats. The league does not like having the optics of the bleacher seats for whatever reason. They don't love it. Like, they barely ever play in stadiums that do. On occasion, when they have to, they will play in a college stadium, like Illini Stadium for the Bears back in the day, or even Minnesota. But, like, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Minnesota's, like, the University of Minnesota Stadium had much bleacher seating. So for whatever reason, that seems to be a problem for them. But I think the capacity is probably the biggest one. You're not going to get 100,000 people to come to a Cleveland Browns game every Sunday. It's just not happening. And it's not because the Browns aren't more popular than Ohio State. It's when the Browns would be out of market. So it would be a much tougher ask to fill 100,000 in Columbus than it would be like in Cleveland or something like that. And two, the prices are just so high to go to an NFL game. You're not going to find 100,000 people in the state of Ohio that's going to be able to do that on a regular basis. So, while Ohio State, because they own that stadium, can get away with something like $10 tickets, they're giving away a lot of tickets to students. Well, not giving away, but giving away heavily discounted tickets to students. There's a lot of ways that they can go about getting people to the stadium. They have a campus full of people. The Browns don't have that. So they would likely only sell 60, 70,000 tickets in that stadium. That would be horrible optics for the NFL to have a 60 to 70% full college stadium. And then on Saturdays, the day before, that thing is packed out. It wouldn't be good optics. I don't think the league would want those optics. I mentioned Detroit. That could happen. It would be the same inconvenience as being in Columbus, but I do think it would be a little bit more convenient because it would be easier to just fly a plane over the lake and get into Detroit. I think you could do that in 30 minutes. Now, again, I think they would prefer a 30, 40-minute bus ride versus a 30-minute plane ride, but it is something that they could do. Right. I think the plane ride is much more feasible when it comes to Cleveland Berea to Detroit, because you're going over the lake. There's not a lot of traffic over that area. And it's also, if you go down in a lake, not in somebody's house, which is the cynical way of looking at that. But also a point that needs to be understood there. So I think maybe Detroit. Then somebody brought up to me Progressive Field, and I just felt like there's no way that that's ever going to happen. One, I don't think you can't just plop a football field there. There are some baseball stadiums that can plop football fields in there, right? Like Chase Stadium has been renovated to do it. Wrigley Field and what do they call it? Fenway have been renovated to do it in some capacity, but the Jake, and it's the Progressive Park now, but the Jake is just it's not old enough to be historic, but it is old enough to be a little dated. And I just don't think that the Browns are ever going to play there. That wouldn't make any sense. I don't think it would make sense financially. Yes, you could sell more tickets or sell 30 to 50,000 tickets there, but the sightlines would be awful. It would be a bad fan experience. And then you would also have to compete with the Guardians on dates if they get into the playoffs or in September. You would also have to worry about grounds crew and field management. And these are headaches that NFL teams don't want to deal with, because NFL teams are much like only children. They're used to everything being about them because they're the most popular sports. They don't like to share. And I just don't see the ego of the NFL and the NFL owner being able to do that with the baseball team. And then also you would have to pay for a lot of renovations just to get football in there. And then you would be splitting a lot of revenue with the Guardians. And also remember, the people the Dolans are legendarily cheap. So they're going to try to nickel and dime the NFL as much as possible. I just don't think that's not going to work for many reasons. And then I remembered a place that can work. It would have to be renovated a bit, but I think it makes sense that this will get renovated, and this will be a more likely place to get renovated. And that's Benson Stadium, the Tom Benson Stadium in Canton, Ohio. It's not super close to Berea. It's 40, 45 minutes or 30, 35 minutes away. So it's not super far. It only seats 23,000 now. You can add 5 to 10,000 seats there in about a year, and you can get it up to where it needs to be. I think you need to be above 25K or something like that. The Chargers played at StubHub, so the capacity wouldn't be a problem. I know people would be saying, hey, you would miss out on ticket sales. One, ticket revenue just is such a small fraction of what NFL teams make that it really just doesn't matter what the ticket sales are for most teams in order to make money, because a lot of it's revenue sharing. And that's why the league would be like, hey, you need to get over 25,000 seats to not mess up the revenue sharing. But other than that, we're not really worried about ticket sales because everything is shared within the NFL. And two, it wouldn't be that much of a difference in ticket revenue because, yes, you will be selling fewer tickets, but imagine the demand on those 30,000 tickets for Cleveland Browns games. You'll get your money back because you'll be able to charge double for every seat, which, again, that's going to suck for the fans, especially the fans who can't necessarily afford to sit in the lower bowl of Cleveland Browns Stadium right now. That's going to suck for them. But the NFL does not care about what sucks for fans in general. They've done this before, right? So they would probably do that. They would probably play in Canton. That would make the most sense. Canton has a NFL caliber natural grass field. They played a Hall of Fame game there. And even if it's an exhibition game in the NFL, if it's good enough to host a NFL game at any level, that means it has to be certified and get through a certain series of tests. So you already know it's certified. Also, it'd be easier to work out with the ownership of the stadium because it is the same ownership that owns the NFL Hall of Fame, which the NFL works with routinely. They donate to them routinely, so it will make getting funding for the renovation much, much, much easier. It would be very easy for this team to play in Canton. It would make a lot of sense for the league, for Jimmy Haslam. It would probably be the most frictionless way of playing somewhere else, and this is probably what they would do. So the Browns are going to be going all in for the next 2 years. They're probably going to be in Canton by like 2025 for like a couple of years. And then they'll move back to New Cleveland Browns Stadium when they're ready to start the second window of Deshaun Watson in Cleveland. But that's the next like 10 years for this team. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What do you think of that roadmap? I think it's very interesting, but y'all let me know in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day.